Marian devotion has been a central element of Catholic practice for centuries. While Catholic apologists argue that devotion to Mary is veneration and not worship, history reveals that Marian devotion has often been leveraged to achieve political, economic, and religious goals. Below, we examine key instances over the last 2,000 years where the elevation of Mary was used as a tool for manipulation, control, and influence, often in ways that contradict modern theological claims. However, before we get started, this is not an indictment on Mary. It's simply meant to serve as a brief history of how institutions, particularly the Catholic Church, has used Marian theology for its own personal gains, which I believe cannot be ignored. So here we go. Number 1, the Council of Ephesus. Mary as Theotokos to consolidate power. Here's the event. The Council of Ephesus officially declared Mary as God-bearer or Mother of God. While the primary intent was theological, to affirm Christ's divinity and counter Nestorianism, it also served as a broader purpose. The declaration aimed to unite the fragmented Roman Empire under a single Christological doctrine, strengthening the authority of the Church. But by exalting Mary as the Mother of God, the Church created an emotional and devotional focal point for the faithful. This move secured loyalty to the Church, while sidelining dissenting factions like the Nestorians. The elevation of Mary served as a unifying symbol, bolstering the Church's authority over both theological disputes and political divisions. So what was the outcome? Well, the Council's decision cemented Mary's role in Catholic devotion, laying the foundation for her eventual portrayal as a near-divine figure in later centuries. Number 2, medieval Marian pilgrimages and indulgences. During the medieval period, Marian shrines such as those at Lourdes, Chartres, and Walsingham became major pilgrimage destinations. These sites often featured miraculous images or relics associated with Mary. The Church used Marian pilgrimage to reinforce religious authority and generate economic wealth. Pilgrims were promised indulgences, or the remission of sins, for visiting Marian shrines, fostering the belief that Mary could intercede for their salvation. This practice increased reliance on church-approved rituals and encouraged financial donations to fund ecclesiastical projects. What was the ultimate outcome? Well, Marian devotion through pilgrimage became a lucrative industry. The Church's wealth and influence grew as pilgrims donated land, treasures, and money, further centralizing ecclesiastical power. Number 3, the rise of the Rosary and the Crusades. Saint Dominic promoted the Rosary as a Marian prayer tool, tying it to spiritual warfare. Popes and church leaders linked Marian devotion to military victories, especially during the Crusades. What was the goal? Well, the Rosary and Marian prayers were used to rally support for the Crusades and present the Church's military campaigns as divinely sanctioned. Marian apparitions and miracles were invoked to inspire soldiers to assure them of divine protection. Victories in battle were attributed to Mary's intercession, reinforcing the idea that the participation in the Crusades was a sacred duty. What was the ultimate outcome? Well, the Marian narrative helped mobilize armies, secure resources, and maintain public support for prolonged and costly wars. Number 4, the Counter-Reformation and Marian devotion. You see, during the Protestant Reformation, Marian doctrines such as the Immaculate Conception and Mary's role as Queen of Heaven were emphasized to counter Protestant critiques. The Catholic Church sought to distinguish itself from Protestant movements and reassert its spiritual authority. Marian processions, miracles, and apparitions were publicized to demonstrate the Church's divine favor. By positioning Mary as an intercessor for the faithful, the Church reinforced its role as the mediator of salvation. So what was the outcome? Well, Marian devotion became a rallying point for Catholics, solidifying loyalty to the Church during a time of religious upheaval and aiding the Counter-Reformation's success. Number 5. Colonialism and Marian apparitions. Apparitions like Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico and Our Lady of Lavang in Vietnam played key roles in missionary efforts. The Church used Marian devotion to facilitate the conversion of indigenous peoples and legitimize colonial rule. Mary was portrayed as a motherly figure who embraced indigenous cultures, blending native traditions with Catholic teachings. This tactic eased resistance to colonialization by presenting Catholicism as a religion of compassion and inclusion. The ultimate outcome was that Marian devotion helped establish the Church's dominance in colonized territories, securing its influence over both the spiritual and political lives of native populations. Number 6. The Dogma of the Immaculate Conception. Pope Pius IX declared the Immaculate Conception an official dogma, asserting that Mary was conceived without original sin. This happened in 1854. This declaration aimed to strengthen papal authority during a period of political instability, particularly in the face of rising secular nationalism in Europe. Now, by defining a new Marian dogma, Pope Pius IX reinforced the idea that the Pope held ultimate theological authority. This move was a direct assertion of Church power against the backdrop of diminishing temporal control. Ultimately, the dogma heightened Marian devotion and bolstered Catholic identity, securing the Church's position during a time of significant political and cultural change. Number 7. Marian devotion in fascist regimes. During the Spanish Civil War and Francisco Franco's regime, Marian devotion was heavily promoted through public processions and state-sponsored festivals. The regime sought to align Catholicism with nationalist ideology, portraying loyalty to Mary as synonymous with loyalty to Spain. Franco used Marian devotion to surpass political dissent, equating religious observance with patriotism. Public veneration of Mary became a tool for fostering unity under authoritarian rule. So you see, Marian symbols were weaponized to legitimize Franco's regime, reinforcing both religious and political control over the population. Number 8. Modern Marian apparitions and political influence. Apparitions such as those at Fatima were widely publicized and tied to global political events, including the fight against communism. The Church used the Fatima apparitions to rally Catholics against the perceived threat of Soviet atheism and secularism. The message of Fatima, which included calls for Russia's conversion, was used to frame the Cold War as a spiritual battle. Popes and bishops encouraged Marian prayers as a weapon against communism. The outcome? Well, Marian devotion became a symbol of anti-communist resistance, bolstering the Church's influence during a time of geopolitical tension. So you see, while Catholic theology draws a clear distinction between veneration of Mary and worship, history reveals that Marian devotion has frequently been elevated to near worship status to achieve broader goals. Whether uniting empires, funding wars, or legitimizing colonial and political regimes, the figure of Mary has been strategically leveraged for purposes beyond her biblical role. These examples illustrate how religious practices can serve institutional ambitions, sometimes in ways that diverge from modern theological defenses. So, one final thought: Mary, the Mother of our Lord, has nothing to do with any of this. This is simply institutions leveraging the populations and leveraging motherly devotion for personal gain. And before you cry heresy about the Catholic Church, remember, Protestants, one thing that you get wrong is that you should honor Mary, the Mother of Jesus. Although it is certainly understandable why Protestants would want to separate from the history of Marian theology. As always, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.